Well, my name's Matt. If I've not met you, even if I have met you, my name's still Matt. And one of the pastors here, and it's my privilege to be with you this morning. I think what a great song to lead us into where we are this morning. So I want to invite us to take a moment to pause as we begin. As we do so, to just take a moment to still and to quieten. So I invite you to, in your seats, just settle yourself into a comfortable position. Take a deep breath and slowly exhale it again. Notice the sounds around you, the hum of the air conditioner and the fans, maybe the rustle of your clothes, the murmur of children, the rustle of paper. Notice the feel of your body. Maybe there's an ache in your limbs, in a muscle. Feel the weight of your body pressing into the chair. Feel the air cooling your skin. And just breathe. And slow. And pause. And in that pause, become aware of God's presence. And echoing even the song that we've just sung, invite Him to speak to you in the quiet. So much of our lives is just filled with noise and activity. Even when we gather as a church and come together as God's people, so much of our service, it's full of words and doing and things. And so to take a moment to pause can be uncomfortable, can be unfamiliar. But it's exactly what we're talking about today as we continue in our adventures in prayer. Over the next weeks, we'll take that word pray and use it as an acronym to prompt and guide us as we engage in this adventure. And today we're starting with the letter P and that idea of being able to pause. And pausing is challenging for us. Pete Greig, the author of the book How to Pray, says this. He says that prayer can easily become a frenetic extension of the manic way that I live too much of my life. And if this is as true for you as it can be for me, then slowing down and stopping and being still and quiet, it's challenging. Our environment or our schedule makes it hard. Our discomfort of it, even in a moment like when we're standing in the line at the shopping checkout, the discomfort of it drives us to pick up our phones and to scroll through. Or we feel guilty about all the things that we're not doing and the time that we're wasting. And so sometimes we'll give it a shot, but then something within us rebels against it and pushes back. So then we just get back to being busy with all the things, with all the noise, and all that frenetic way that we live our lives, doing all the things and thinking all the thoughts. The Protestant reformer Martin Luther apparently said that I've got so much to do that I shall spend the first 3 hours in prayer. Now, beyond feeling totally inadequate as a Christian in comparison to such a statement, we also just think, that's unrealistic. Who actually has time for that? And yet there's a part of us that longs for it. Maybe not 3 hours. Man, sometimes we'd be happy with 3 minutes, but we at least long for some space. The psalmist in Psalm 42 writes that as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When can I go and meet with my God? And I don't think it's any accident that the psalmist paired this longing for meeting with God with the imagery of a deer that is thirsting for water. Because the deer is not going to stop to drink in the midst of loud noise and hustle and bustle and activity. That's actually going to send it bounding away. Likewise, the psalmist is saying that our longing for God is met in the quiet, in the stillness. It requires that we take time to pause. But why do we find pausing so hard? Why do we push back against it, even as we have this longing within us and we desire it, we long to pause to meet with our God, and yet we live our lives, so counter and contrary to that? Why do we push back against it even as we long for it? Why, when a moment of stillness and quiet does come our way, why do we still immediately fill it with things from our to-do list, or with looking at our phones, or with anything but experiencing that gentle whisper of God that comes in the silence? Well, I want to suggest two answers for us today as to why we push against it. And one answer is that we might equate being busy with living a meaningful life. The busier we are, well then the richer, the more meaningful, the more productive and significant our lives must be, is how the logic goes. And in a Christian context, we can equate being busy doing Christian things with being particularly mature. I must be a godly, spiritual person because my calendar is so full of Christian things. But under such a mindset, even prayer becomes one more thing for us to do. It becomes another task for us to tick off to say that we've done it before we move on to the next thing. But pausing, even though it might feel like another thing to do, is actually an invitation for us to stop doing, to just be, and to be in relationship with God. I want to know you more, we've just sung. Now, our family is one that defaults to busyness. There are 6 of us. We've got 4 kids who each do multiple things. And then Maren and I, crazily enough, want to also have a life outside of just working and parenting. And so we also do things. And so the family calendar is essential that everyone puts all their things on it. It all falls apart if it's not on the calendar and it's not then able to be managed and negotiated. And so in the midst of all that's going on, though, in our family, we've identified that actually Saturday nights seem to be a time when usually we are all at home without anything to go on nowhere else to go or anything else to do. And so we've made dinner on Saturday night to be a special time. Now, it will normally then be a roast. Pork last night, my crackle was... It was good. And my potatoes, I struggled with my potatoes. Last night I crushed them. They were awesome. So, a Saturday night roast. So, if you get invited to our place on a Saturday night, you're in for something, you're in for a treat, really. But as I said, normally a roast, and it will see us all gathered around the table. And we're not quickly scoffing it down like we do through the week because we've got this small window of time to eat it before we got to rush off to something else. We'll rather eat slowly and for enjoyment. And as we eat, there are many different conversations that are had around and across the table. There's laughter and enjoyment. There's deep sharing, serious reflections. There's probably an argument about who has to do the dishes afterwards. But that's actually, I think, as much because we appreciate being slow and not having to do anything. We appreciate the opportunity to just be and to be together. And that's what pausing is actually inviting us into. To take a break from all the doing even our Christian doing, and to just be in God's presence and experience relationship with him. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are wearied and burdened, and I will give you rest." He invites us to pause as we come to him, to cease our busyness that's exhausting us, and to just be. We see this as Jesus is in the home of Mary and Martha. Martha, in Luke 10, we read, she's distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. So here's Martha. She's busy tidying the house. She's getting dinner ready. She's setting the table, dealing with the dog that snuck in. She's getting the guest room ready just in case. And while she's busy doing all this, Mary is just sitting at Jesus' feet. Mary is being still in his presence, enjoying relationship with him. Martha is so busy doing things for Jesus that she misses out on being with Jesus. And so in the face of her complaints, Jesus tells her that Mary has chosen what is better. Yes, there's a place for getting things done, absolutely. But busyness works against us having deep and rich relationships. And you know this, that there's that good friend of yours that you'd love to catch up with. But between your schedule and theirs, you just can't find time to spend extended time together. So you squeeze in a quick coffee, you might have a brief phone call, you'll send a text message, but all the while you just long to be able to just have this uninterrupted extended time with them. And this idea has actually been scientifically proven. The Journal of Social and Personal Relationships published a study by Jeffrey Hall called, "How Many Hours Does It Take to Make a Friend?" And I wonder if this is the way that your mind thinks that this is something that you want to research, it probably comes from a personal place, because maybe he doesn't have many and so he needs to expand his network perhaps. That was judgmental, I'm sorry. But it makes me wonder, who studies this? And what makes someone think about this? But anyway, so he conducted this study. How many hours does it take to make a friend? If you want to have established just a casual relationship with someone, it'll take 40 to 60 hours of investing in that. If you want to transition to more than that, for it to become a real friend, then it's going to take about 80 to 100 hours. But for your close friendships, they need at least 200 hours of investment for a close friendship. And so think about that practically. If you're able to spend 1 hour a week with someone you want to be your close friend, it's going to take about 4 years before you kind of get to that point. But we don't often give that much time to anyone because we're too busy. Our busyness works against relationships. And so no wonder then we don't feel close to God in our relationship with him, because prayer is about relating to God, spending time with him and building our relationship with him. And so if busyness works against relationship, then it means that it's working against our relationship with God too. But it then means that pausing from all of our stuff, slowing down, quieting ourselves, helps to foster our relationship with God. See, when we reduce prayer to a task to do that we may or may not get time for, then everyone's is shortchanged. But when we see it as this invitation to pause, to slow down, to take time to be together with God, then it can be something entirely different. And I want to say that's where the adventure is. It becomes full of discovery and challenge and surprise. Marilyn and I have been together 30 years, and even just the other day, she was sharing something in a conversation, and I'm like, I didn't know that. And so think about that in the context of our relationship with the infinite God of the universe. I mean, one of the songs that we'll sometimes sing here says, "For endless days I will sing your praise." And we can do that because for endless days we will be exploring and discovering the depths and the wonders of who God is and finding out countless new things about him that prompt our praise of him. And so I want to say that we pause because we desire a deeper relationship with God. We stop all of our doing simply to be with him. And yet, as I started with, we resist that pausing because, for one thing, we're so busy. Whatever is driving that, whether it's this sense of meaning and significance, whether it's this sense of maturity and godliness, whatever it might be, we resist pausing because our lives are too busy. But there's another reason that perhaps actually underlies that one, why we resist pausing. And that's because pausing isn't just about us slowing down. It's actually about us relinquishing control. It's not just that we're too busy, it's that we're afraid to let go. See, behind our busyness is this sense that if it all depends on us, that it will all fall apart if we don't do it. This is me at home around dinner time. I have in my head that I'm the only one who can cook dinner and wash the dishes and clean up the kitchen and drop off or pick up the kids, in the midst of cooking dinner, and do it all like within this 30-minute window that we then need to, that we've done it within, so that then we can get on to our next thing. And so then I head off and lead a Bible study as a picture of calm and steady godliness. Now, there are 6 people in our house, sometimes 7. There are plenty of other people who can help and contribute. And Marilyn lets me know that regularly. But I act as if it all depends on me and that if I don't do it, it's all going to fall apart. Because as soon as I get someone else involved, as soon as I relinquish control, well, then they're not going to do it how I would do it, which, let's be honest, means they're doing it wrong. Now, I do exaggerate, but to be honest, maybe not much. And that's just such a simple example, but it illustrates that this resistance to slowing my pace, because this resistance comes because I need to be in control of my world. And that sense of being the one in control is me grasping to be like God. I want to be the God of my own life, and so I act as if I am. And if it all depends on me, then I can't afford to pause, because what if it then all falls apart? But this is at least one of the purposes of Sabbath. One day a week, God built into our rhythm this idea that we stop all of our working and we trust that God will still keep the world spinning even without our help. It's one of the gifts of sleep, that for a period each day, for some of us, multiple periods each day, we let go and we let the world run without us. We take our hands off the wheel and we let God be God. And that's, though, where our struggle lies with pausing, because pausing requires that we surrender. In the church that I grew up in, we had a verse on one of our walls so that we would see it every week and read it. And it was Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." And it's a really obvious verse for us to use today as we consider this idea of pausing before God in prayer. Let's be still, let's pause. And by itself, it seems to be inviting us to slow down, to take a break, to be then in God's presence with him. But when we read it in context, when we read it in the context of the whole of Psalm 46, it actually comes not as an invitation, but more like a command. It's actually God saying to us, stop all your striving and your fighting and your contending. Stop all your efforts to control and to orchestrate and to manipulate. Stop all your ways of seeking to be God. Just stop. Be still. And recognize that I'm the one who's God. Surrender your will to mine. Let me rule and reign. Let me be the God that I am. God, through the psalmist, is telling us to take off our crowns, to lay them down, and to then recognize his crown, that he's the one who is God over all. This is what we practically do when we pause. And it's this that we rebel against, and we have done ever since the Garden of Eden. But it's this surrender, this stopping our doing to leave it all in God's hands, that rightly orders our life, that we can live with God, not just as an add-on to our lives, but an add-on when we need him, but as the center of our lives. So Pete Greig in that book says, moments of stillness at the start of a prayer time are moments of surrender, in which we stop competing with God and we relinquish our Messiah complexes and we resign from trying to save the planet. And this is what we see in Psalm 131. Psalm 131 starts like this. My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or with things too wonderful for me. The psalmist says he's not reaching beyond himself and beyond his scope and capacity. He's not trying to run the world or to be concerned about things that are beyond him, but rather he recognizes and submits to the one who is God, who is Lord over all. So in contrast to refusing to surrender, he says, but I have calmed and I've quieted myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Now, we've had a little baby boom in our church over the last 12 months or so. There's multiple of them in the cry room at the moment. And the thing about a newborn is that when they are hungry, they will let you know in no uncertain terms. No matter what you try to do to hold them off, no matter how recently that they've just had, no matter how much you try to rationalize with them that, no, you've just eaten, you don't need anything yet. No matter what you do to try to hold them off, they demand to be fed. Sometimes they get themselves so worked up that you're trying to feed them, but you actually got to calm them first before they can even take it. But the psalmist says that unlike that impatient and demanding newborn, that he's like a weaned child. He's no longer insisting on getting his way in his time. He's not trying to get the world to go his way, to work to his concept of how it should go, whether by his own action or by demanding it of God. Rather, he says that he's calm and he's content, simply in the presence of God, not asking anything of him, but just trusting in God to know what's needed and that he will act appropriately. He's quiet and still in the warmth of presence and relationship. And so the psalm finishes by saying, so Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. In other words, our surrender, expressed when we pause, is actually an expression of faith and of trust in God. Pausing says that our hope is not in our ability to run the world or even just our little part of it, but rather by our surrender, by us relinquishing control, we express where our hope truly lies. That it lies in the God who made us and saved us and who rules and reigns both now and forevermore. And as we pause from our busyness to deepen our relationship with God, we also come to know more and more profoundly that he's worthy of all of our faith and our trust. And so we experience the adventure of prayer, of finding ourselves lighter as we're able to let go, to not carry so much of the burden of the world upon our own shoulders, but we let that go, free to trust in God wherever he might lead us. And so as we then be still and know that he's God, we can experience the reality of the start of that psalm that tells us that God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. And so therefore, because we're trusting in him and his presence, therefore we will not fear. Even if the earth gives way and the mountains fall into the sea and the waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. Because we're like a weaned child experiencing contentment in the presence of our mother. So pausing invites us to slow down and to stop, to just be with Jesus and to trust in him. So how do we do that practically? How do we bring this into our lives in a way that's realistic and achievable? What are some ideas for us on how to pause? Well, firstly, I want to say, do as you can, not as you can't. I suspect very few of us could do the 3 hours at the start of the day that Martin Luther did. That's utterly unrealistic. So start small. Start for 3 minutes. Start for 30 seconds. And go for consistency if you can. Do what you can, not what you can't. Next, I think it's helpful to think about establishing some rituals to help. Now, let me explain this one. I actually love that the imagery for this series has ended up being a campsite. Because one of the things that our family loves to do is to go camping by the river at Mount Beauty. And the reason we love it is this. Aside from the good company, Malpasses, who we're normally camping with, aside from the company, because even if they're not there, we still love it. Why we love it is this. We arrive, we get there, we set up the tent, we open up the camp chair, set it by the river, we sit, and we immediately exhale. We go to this certain place, we get it set up and ready, and just those actions let our mind and our bodies know, okay, now it's time to relax. It's a ritual. We do it once a year, maybe twice a year. And when we do those actions, it lets us know we can pause. So that's what a ritual does. And it doesn't have to be as significant as going camping. It might be lighting a candle, sitting in a certain chair, making a cup of tea, kneeling by your bed, maybe parking under a tree, putting your phone on silent and away, using a particular pen in your journal. Whatever it is, a ritual primes the pump. It already does half the work for you. As you engage in these ritual actions, it already prepares you to be able to pause and just be. And so that ties pretty closely with what David talked about a couple of weeks ago, about having a space as a trigger to prompt your prayer. Another idea on practically how do we pause is that we integrate our physicality. See, we are made mind, spirit, and body. And we can't then ignore our body in prayer. And I want to talk about our bodies in two ways in this context. One is that maybe you're someone who likes or needs to move. So much of our discussion about prayer, even today, implies stillness, sitting and being still. But maybe what best helps you to pause, to slow down all the racing thoughts, to stop being preoccupied with all the things, maybe what best helps you to pause is to go for a run, go for a swim. Maybe it's nothing as energetic as that. Maybe it's simply colouring or crocheting. I mean, in those activities, you find yourself free from distractions. You're not preoccupied doing other things. And that's then when you're able to pause and to be with God. Another way in which our bodies can help us pause is that what we do with our physical bodies can create and express a spiritual reality. Now, there are some kids here. Sex is an example of this. What we do in the physical act of sexual intimacy both creates and expresses a spiritual, emotional, and relational dynamic of oneness that goes beyond the physical. What we do in our bodies creates this thing that is more profound and beyond just what is physical. So when it comes to prayer, what we do with our bodies can create conditions to help us to pause and for prayer and to express an inner, deeper reality. So for instance, you want to pray, but you just keep getting distracted by all the thoughts that are swirling around in your head, all the things on the to-do list, all the things that you're worried and stressed about. And so maybe when you pray, just open your hands to God. And with your body, pray. And as you express with your open palms, you're saying, God, take all my thoughts, take all my problems, take all my struggles. I'm surrendering them to you. And you keep your hands open, making that offering until your mind slows and you let go. That opening our hands creates that dynamic and also expresses the desires of our hearts. So integrate our bodies, our physicality in our prayer. Another idea might be to try fasting. I was thinking about this in the context of food, that maybe there's, a meal a week that you choose to skip, to then free that time of preparation and eating to be able to have extra time to pause for prayer. But maybe, realistically, the real time occupier that needs to be fasted from is our phones. Whether it's putting screen time limits on it, using blocking software, leaving it in an out-of-the-way part of the home. If we remove this from our lives, even for a few minutes, there's more time for us for prayer without distraction. And lastly, then I want to say that as we try to implement pausing for prayer more in our lives, that we need to do it with grace. Both the grace of God that gives us the desire and the ability to do it, but also grace for ourselves. See, guilt and duty and obligation, they're not great motivators for prayer and for drawing us closer to God. But grace is. And so the Trappist monk Thomas Keating says, if in prayer, if your mind gets distracted 1,000 times in 10 minutes of prayer, that's actually 1,000 opportunities for you to come back to the loving presence of Jesus. Just as he was for Martha, Jesus is there waiting for us when we come back to him from all the things and the places that have distracted us. And each distraction just gives us this opportunity to enact again this reorientation of our lives, to express again consciously, mindfully, to come back to Jesus and to express our faith and our trust in him. And that, after all, is the adventure that we're engaging in with prayer. To have a lifetime spent deepening our relationship with Jesus. He made the way for it. And he invites us now to pause, to slow down, to surrender, to make that space to be simply with him. And we began the message today by doing just that. So it seems fitting that as we draw to a close, that we take the time again to pause before him, to simply be with the God who welcomes us. So take a moment again and just get comfortable where you're sitting. Take that deep breath and slowly exhale. Because what we do with our bodies affects our minds, our thoughts, our emotions. As we slowly breathe, we calm, we quieten. Maybe you want to open your hands and your knees to surrender your anxious thoughts, or to be ready to receive from your Father who loves you. But be still, slow, pause, and in the quiet, become aware of God's loving presence with you. You are God in heaven, so let my words be few. Help us to pause, to slow down our lives and to surrender our wills, that we may deepen our relationship with you, God, we pray. Amen. And continue to stay in the quiet and the still as the band comes and prepares to lead us as we conclude.